Marcus Daniels gripped the armrests of his first-class seat, his knuckles whitening under the pressure. The flight to London was already 40 minutes delayed, and the recycled cabin air felt suffocating. He closed his eyes, trying to center himself before the important meeting awaiting him across the Atlantic. As the founder and CEO of Horizon Tech Solutions, a rising star in cybersecurity, he couldn't afford any delays. The Blackstone Group wouldn't wait forever with their offer. "Excuse me, sir." The flight attendant's voice cut through his thoughts. "Could I see your boarding pass again?" Marcus reached for his phone, pulling up the digital ticket he'd already shown twice. "Is there a problem?" he asked, noticing how the other first-class passengers, predominantly older white men in expensive suits, weren't being subjected to the same scrutiny. The flight attendant glanced at his screen and frowned. "I need to verify some information with the gate agent. Please come with me." "We're already delayed and about to take off," Marcus said, maintaining his composure despite the familiar knot forming in his stomach. "Can't this wait?" "Sir, I need you to come with me now." Her voice had risen, drawing attention from nearby passengers. 2 rows ahead, a silver-haired executive in an Italian suit watched with undisguised curiosity. Marcus felt the weight of the stares around him. At 35, he'd experienced enough of these random checks to recognize what was happening. Still, he unbuckled his seatbelt and stood, all 6'2" of him, straightening his custom navy suit. "I'll get this sorted quickly," he told the flight attendant, following her down the aisle with practiced dignity. As they stepped off the jetway, 2 security officers waited, their expressions neutral but stance alert. Marcus's jaw tightened. "There seems to be a situation with your booking," the gate agent explained without meeting his eyes. "We need to verify your identity." "I've shown my ID 3 times already," Marcus replied evenly. "I have a confirmed first-class seat on this flight. I checked in online yesterday." "Sir, there's been a complaint about..." "About what?" Marcus asked, the professional mask he wore beginning to slip. "About a black man sitting in first class?" The agent's eyes widened. "No, sir, that's not. I've spent over $60,000 on flights with your airline this year alone," Marcus continued, his voice controlled but firm. "I'm a Diamond Elite member. What exactly is the issue here?" The minutes that followed became a blur of bureaucratic excuses, sidelong glances, and ultimately the crushing reality that he would not be boarding that plane again. Something about passenger comfort and resolving the situation on a later flight. As Marcus collected his carry-on bag that a security officer had unceremoniously pulled from the overhead bin, he caught the eye of the silver-haired executive who had watched the initial confrontation. Unlike the averted gazes of other passengers, this man was studying him with open interest. For a fleeting moment, their eyes locked, the man's expression unreadable, before Marcus turned away. Outside in the terminal, Marcus found a quiet corner and pulled out his phone. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the familiar, exhausting anger that came with these moments. He dialed his assistant. "Alicia, I need you to find me another flight to London." "No, not on United." He paused, taking a deep breath. "Also, get me the contact information for their executive offices." Yes, it happened again. As he ended the call, a text message appeared from an unknown number. "That was disgraceful. I saw everything. We should talk." Caroline Reynolds, CEO, Atlantic Airways. Marcus stared at the message in disbelief. Caroline Reynolds? The notoriously private head of United's biggest competitor? He'd never met her, but everyone in the business world knew of the former Wall Street wunderkind who had taken over the struggling airline 5 years ago and transformed it into an industry leader. "I'm in the Admiral's Lounge if you have a moment. There's a guest pass waiting for you at reception." Curiosity overrode his desire to leave the airport immediately. 20 minutes later, after being escorted through the exclusive lounge, Marcus found himself sitting across from the silver-haired woman he'd glimpsed on the plane. In person, Caroline Reynolds was striking, somewhere in her early 50s with sharp blue eyes that missed nothing and an elegance that spoke of old money and refined taste. "Mr. Daniels," she said, offering her hand. "I apologize for the unorthodox introduction, but I couldn't let what I witnessed go unaddressed." Her grip was firm, her gaze direct. Marcus found himself immediately respecting her straightforwardness. "Ms. Reynolds, I appreciate the gesture, but this isn't exactly an uncommon occurrence." "Which makes it all the more unacceptable," she replied, gesturing for him to take a seat. "And please, call me Caroline." The server approached with 2 glasses of scotch, apparently already ordered. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Macallan 18, she explained with the hint of a smile. "I did my homework while waiting. You mentioned it in your entrepreneur profile last year." Marcus couldn't help but be impressed. "Should I be flattered or concerned by your research skills?" "A bit of both, perhaps." Her smile deepened before fading into seriousness. "What happened on that plane was inexcusable, but unfortunately not surprising. The airline industry has a particularly poor record when it comes to racial profiling." "I've filed complaints before," Marcus admitted, taking a sip of the excellent scotch. "Nothing changes." "Because complaints get buried by corporate PR teams," Caroline said bluntly. "What if you had a different avenue of recourse?" "I'm listening." Caroline leaned forward. Atlantic Airways is preparing to launch a new business class service focused on tech entrepreneurs and executives. We've been looking for a partner to develop the digital infrastructure, booking systems, loyalty programs, integrated security protocols. Marcus's eyebrows rose slightly. "And you just happened to witness a tech CEO being removed from your competitor's flight?" "Serendipity," Caroline acknowledged with a slight shrug. "But I recognized you immediately. Your facial recognition software is the best in the industry. We were already considering approaching Horizon Tech. And now? Now I'm not just interested in your technology," Caroline said, her eyes intensely focused. "I'm interested in your perspective. Atlantic needs to do better than our competitors on every front, including how we treat our passengers. All of them." Over the next 2 hours, what began as an expression of outrage evolved into something neither of them had anticipated. Caroline spoke candidly about Atlantic's challenges in modernizing their digital systems and culture. Marcus found himself sharing experiences and insights he rarely discussed in professional settings. The additional burdens he carried as a Black founder in Silicon Valley, the invisible barriers that persistent racism created, and his vision for technology that could actually solve human problems rather than perpetuate them. "We're planning to invest $4 billion in our digital transformation over the next 5 years," Caroline said as they finished their second round of drinks. "I'd like Horizon Tech to be a major part of that, not just as a vendor, but as a strategic partner." Marcus studied her, searching for any sign of performative allyship or opportunism. He found none. "Why me, really? Beyond witnessing that incident?" Caroline considered the question carefully. "Because what I saw today wasn't just discrimination. I saw how you handled it, with dignity and restraint I'm not sure I could have mustered. That told me something about your character." She paused. And frankly, it's time for this industry to be disrupted from the inside out. We need partners who see the problems that the rest of us have been blind to. As they exchanged contact information and agreed to have their teams arrange formal meetings, Marcus felt something unexpected. A genuine connection with this forthright, no-nonsense woman who had witnessed his humiliation and responded with respect rather than pity. "I'll have my car take you wherever you need to go," Caroline offered as they prepared to part ways. "And there's a seat on our 9 p.m. flight to London if you still need to make that trip." "Thank you," Marcus said simply, meaning it for more than just the offer of transportation. Caroline held his gaze for a moment longer than necessary. "This could be the beginning of something important, Mr. Daniels." Her professional tone had softened slightly. "For both of us." Neither could have predicted just how true those words would prove to be. 3 months later, Marcus stood at the window of his penthouse hotel suite in Paris, watching the early morning light paint the Eiffel Tower in golden hues. Behind him, his team was setting up for the final day of negotiations with Atlantic Airways. The partnership had evolved far beyond the initial technology contract, expanding into a comprehensive overhaul of the airline's entire customer experience philosophy. His phone buzzed with a text from Caroline. "Meeting pushed back an hour. Join me for breakfast at the rooftop? Just us." Marcus felt the now familiar flutter in his stomach that Caroline's messages often provoked. Their professional relationship had developed into something uncommonly close over the intensive weeks of planning and negotiation. Late-night strategy sessions had evolved into dinners where conversation drifted from business to personal histories, shared views on everything from politics to art, and an increasingly difficult-to-ignore attraction. He texted back, "See you in 15. When he arrived at the hotel's rooftop restaurant, Caroline was already there, dressed impeccably as always in a charcoal gray suit, her silver hair catching the morning light. She was reviewing documents but looked up with a smile that transformed her usually serious face. "The board approved the final numbers," she said by way of greeting. $4 billion with the option to extend the partnership for another 3 years. Marcus took the seat across from her. "That's excellent news. My team will be thrilled." "Just your team?" Caroline asked with a raised eyebrow. "Well, the CEO is moderately pleased as well," he replied with a grin. They fell into easy conversation as they ate, discussing implementation timelines and PR strategies for the announcement. But underneath the professional dialogue ran a current of unspoken tension that had been building for weeks. "I have something for you," Caroline said finally, sliding a small envelope across the table. "Call it a partnership bonus." Curious, Marcus opened it to find a boarding pass, first class on Atlantic Airways to Santorini. "I remember you mentioning it was on your bucket list," she explained. "The company villa there is empty next month. I thought you might like to finally take that vacation you've been postponing for 3 years. Marcus studied her face, trying to read the invitation behind the gift. "Generous of the company." "The company has nothing to do with it," Caroline said quietly, her usual confidence giving way to something more vulnerable. "This is from me." The admission hung between them, shifting the atmosphere as surely as if someone had altered the gravity in the room. "Would I be going alone?" Marcus asked, the question loaded with meaning. Caroline met his eyes directly. "That depends entirely on you." 3 months ago, I was being escorted off a plane, Marcus said, still sometimes disbelieving of how his life had changed. "Now I'm finalizing a multi-billion-dollar deal and being invited to Santorini by one of the most powerful women in the industry." "Is that how you see me?" Caroline asked. "As one of the most powerful women in the industry." Marcus considered her question carefully. At first, yes. But now I see Caroline, who drinks her coffee black but secretly loves hot chocolate. Who quotes Toni Morrison in business meetings and stays up until 2 a.m. solving crossword puzzles when she's stressed. A flush of color touched Caroline's cheeks. A rare sight. And how do you feel about Caroline? Instead of answering immediately, Marcus reached across the table and took her hand. The touch was electric, crossing a boundary they had both carefully maintained despite the growing attraction. I feel like Santorini would be much better with company, he said finally. Specifically yours. Caroline's fingers tightened around his. This is complicated, Marcus. The deal, our companies, the 20-year age difference, the public scrutiny. Life is complicated, he interrupted gently. But some things are remarkably simple. With that, he leaned across the table and kissed her, a brief, tender gesture that nevertheless conveyed months of building attraction and mutual respect. When he pulled back, Caroline's expression was stunned, then transformed into something radiantly happy before she schooled it back to her usual composure. Well, she said, her voice slightly unsteady, that was certainly one way to seal a partnership. I'm a big believer in direct communication. Marcus replied with a smile. Prevents misunderstandings. Caroline laughed, the sound bright and unexpected in the formal setting. Several heads turned at nearby tables, executives surprised to see the famously stern CEO of Atlantic Airways so unguarded. I should warn you, she said, lowering her voice. I'm not known for being easy to deal with. And I, Marcus responded, am not known for backing down from a challenge. The announcement of the historic partnership between Atlantic Airways and Horizon Tech Solutions dominated business headlines for weeks. The press release highlighted the innovative technology solutions that would transform the airline industry. But the business world buzzed with speculation about the unlikely alliance between Caroline Reynolds, the ice queen of aviation, and Marcus Daniels, the brilliant but guarded tech founder. What the press didn't capture were the late-night phone calls between New York and San Francisco as they coordinated between their demanding schedules. The private jet that sometimes made the cross-country journey, carrying either Caroline or Marcus for 48-hour visits that were ostensibly about business. The way they challenged each other professionally while nurturing a personal connection that had caught them both by surprise. The board is concerned about perception, Caroline admitted during one such visit, as they sat on the terrace of Marcus's San Francisco home overlooking the bay. Not about your company, everyone's thrilled with the progress, but about us. Marcus sighed, well accustomed to the additional scrutiny their relationship faced. Let me guess. They're worried about the optics of you dating a black man 20 years your junior, who also happens to be a major business partner. Some of them, yes, Caroline acknowledged with characteristic directness. Others are more concerned that I might be distracted from restructuring our European routes. Marcus laughed despite the seriousness of the conversation. You? Distracted from work? Have they met you? Caroline smiled, but her eyes remained troubled. This partnership is revolutionary for both our companies. I don't want personal complications to threaten that. Is that what I am to you? A complication? Marcus asked, his voice carefully neutral. Caroline set down her wine glass and moved to sit beside him, taking his hands in hers. You are the most wonderfully uncomplicated thing in my life, Marcus. That's what terrifies me. The admission hung in the air between them, weighted with vulnerability from a woman who had built her career on never showing weakness. I spent 20 years putting everything second to my career, she continued. My marriage failed because of it. I missed watching my nieces and nephews grow up. I told myself it was worth it because I was building something important." She paused, her thumb tracing patterns on his palm. "Then you came along and suddenly all my carefully constructed priorities started shifting." Marcus brought her hand to his lips, kissing it gently. "We're both builders, Caroline. The difference is that now we're building something together, professionally and personally." "The media attention will be intense when this gets out," she warned. "They'll say I'm having a midlife crisis. They'll say you're using me for connections." "Let them talk," Marcus said with the confidence of someone who had weathered public scrutiny his entire life. "We know the truth." Caroline studied him for a long moment, then reached a decision. "Come with me to the airline industry gala next month. As my date, not my business partner." Marcus raised his eyebrows in surprise. "That's certainly one way to make an announcement." "I'm a big believer in direct communication," she echoed his earlier words with a smile. "Prevents misunderstandings." The night of the gala arrived with all the anticipated fanfare. The airline industry's elite gathered at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, a fitting venue for an event that was more about power dynamics and networking than actual celebration. Marcus arrived separately, walking the red carpet with practiced ease despite the whispers that followed him. In his black tuxedo with subtle blue accents that matched his company's colors, he fielded questions about the Atlantic Airways partnership with diplomatic responses that revealed nothing of his personal connection to the company's CEO. Caroline made her entrance 20 minutes later, a vision in midnight blue that complemented her silver hair and commanded attention without trying. She moved through the crowd with practiced grace, acknowledging competitors and allies alike with the perfect measure of professional warmth. They maintained their distance for the first hour, each playing their public roles flawlessly while exchanging glances across the room that held private meaning. The tension of their secret burned between them, making every stolen look feel dangerous and thrilling. During the dinner service, they were seated at different tables, Caroline with industry executives, Marcus with tech leaders and innovators. The separation was deliberate, a final buffer before they would change everything. As the formal program ended and the networking portion of the evening began, Caroline took to the stage for her scheduled remarks about the future of the industry. Her speech was characteristically brilliant, outlining Atlantic's vision for technological integration and improved customer experience without explicitly mentioning Horizon Tech. Then, departing from her prepared notes, she added, "True innovation requires courage, the courage to recognize when traditional approaches are failing, and the vision to partner with those who see the world differently." Her eyes found Marcus in the crowd. Sometimes the most valuable perspectives come from those whom this industry has historically overlooked or, worse, mistreated. A murmur ran through the audience. Those who knew about the infamous incident that had first brought them together recognized the reference immediately. Atlantic Airways is committed to being a leader, not just in technology and service, but in creating an industry that reflects the diversity of the travelers we serve, Caroline continued. That commitment extends from our boardroom to our newest partnerships. As she left the stage to measured applause, Marcus met her at the bottom of the steps, away from the main crowd but still very much in public view. He offered his hand to help her navigate the final step in her evening gown, a gentleman's gesture that lingered just long enough to signal something more. "Subtle," he murmured with a smile. "I thought so," she replied, her eyes sparkling with the thrill of their public risk. "Ready?" "Since the moment we met," Marcus confirmed. Together, they walked into the main reception area, not quite holding hands but close enough that their connection was unmistakable. The reaction was immediate. Conversations paused, heads turned. Phones were discreetly raised to capture the moment that would dominate industry gossip for months to come. Caroline called the CEO of a rival airline, approaching with false joviality. Wonderful speech. And this must be Mr. Daniels from Horizon Tech. Your new partner. The emphasis on the final word carried insinuation, but Caroline merely smiled. Yes, in every sense of the word. Marcus, you remember Richard Hammond from United. Marcus extended his hand with perfect professionalism. Of course. Pleasure to see you again, though under better circumstances than our last encounter. Hammond had the grace to look uncomfortable, clearly recognizing Marcus as the executive who had been removed from his airline's flight. Yes. Well, these unfortunate incidents happen despite our best policies. Which is exactly why Atlantic is committed to systemic change, rather than just better policies. Caroline interjected smoothly. If you'll excuse us, Richard. As they moved through the crowd, similar scenes played out: thinly veiled surprise, professional congratulations tinged with curiosity, and the occasional genuinely warm response from those who saw beyond the sensational aspects of their partnership. Your ex-husband is by the bar, looking murderous, Marcus observed quietly as they accepted champagne from a passing waiter. Caroline followed his gaze to where her former spouse, a hedge fund manager with political aspirations, was indeed watching them with barely concealed displeasure. James always did have a problem with anyone who didn't fit his narrow worldview, she remarked. One of many reasons we didn't last. Should we go say hello? I'm always up for expanding narrow worldviews, Marcus suggested with a hint of mischief. Caroline laughed. Maybe later. First, there's something I've been wanting to do all evening. With that, she set down her champagne flute and led him to the dance floor where a small orchestra was playing. As they began to move together, her hand in his other hand resting respectfully at her waist, the last pretense of mere professional association fell away. You realize what this means, Marcus said softly as they swayed to the music. By tomorrow morning, we'll be front-page news on every business publication. Good, Caroline replied, her usual concern for public perception mysteriously absent. Let them see what's possible when people look beyond their prejudices and actually recognize talent and character. Is that what attracted you to me? My talent and character? Marcus teased. Caroline's expression softened. Among other qualities. Her hand tightened on his shoulder. I never expected this, Marcus. At my age, after everything, I thought I knew exactly what my life would be. And now? Now I'm dancing at a public event with a brilliant, gorgeous man 20 years my junior, while the entire industry watches and my ex-husband fumes by the bar, she said with a laugh. So clearly I didn't know everything. As the music swelled, Marcus pulled her slightly closer. For the record, I didn't expect this either. But I'm very glad that security officer kicked me off that plane. Caroline's eyes widened in mock outrage. I hope you're not thanking them for their racism. Never, Marcus said seriously. But I am grateful for where it led me. To you. To us building something important together. In that moment, surrounded by the curious eyes of the business elite, Caroline did something entirely out of character. She stopped calculating consequences and simply followed her heart. Rising onto her toes slightly, she kissed Marcus, a brief but unmistakable declaration that left no room for misinterpretation. When she pulled back, Marcus looked stunned but delighted. That wasn't in the PR plan we discussed. I'm revising the strategy, Caroline replied with uncharacteristic impulsiveness. Sometimes a direct approach is best. Across the room, phones captured the moment that would indeed dominate headlines by morning. Airline CEO and TCHFFOUNDER TONFIRM relationship. Business partnership turns personal. But neither Marcus nor Caroline was paying attention to the ripples of reactions spreading through the crowd. They were too busy experiencing the rare and wonderful feeling of finding someone who understood both their professional drive and personal complexity, who had seen them at their most vulnerable and their most powerful, and valued both equally. "So what happens now?" Marcus asked as the dance ended and reality began to intrude once more. Caroline looked up at him with the same decisive clarity that had built her business empire. "Now we continue doing what we've been doing, changing an industry, building something meaningful, and not letting anyone else define what's possible for us." "Together," Marcus added. "Together," Caroline confirmed. "After all, it's a $4 billion partnership. We should make the most of it." As they left the gala later that evening, hand in hand under the glare of photographers' flashes, neither could have imagined the journey ahead. The challenges they would face from shareholders and competitors, the painful growth as they navigated their differences, or the groundbreaking changes their partnership would ultimately bring to an industry desperately in need of transformation. But in that moment, walking into the New York night with fingers intertwined, they were simply two people who had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances. A wrongful removal from a plane that had somehow led to the most right connection of their lives.